Okay, welcome everyone. This is the December 10th meeting of the Seneca County IDA, and we'll start with approving the minutes. Does anyone have a motion to approve our minutes?
So moved.
Second. Second. Does anyone have any comments, adjustments, questions? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Our minutes have been approved. Second item on the agenda are the financial statements. Mr. Kernan.
Thank you. I'm going to do a brief summary of the balance sheet as well as the profit and loss statement. If we were looking at the balance sheet at the end of October, our total assets measured $3,956,000. That's compared to a September total of $3,994,000. A decrease in total assets of $38,040 for the period. When we look at our October 2023 totals, the total assets at that point were $4,216,000. And the difference between October 24 and October 23 in current assets were down $110,000. Notes receivable long-term were down $14,721. Fixed assets were up by $28,000, and other assets were down $162,000 for a net change between those two periods of $259,000. When we look at the payables and liabilities, the total current liabilities at the end of October measured $156,000, and that's a slight change over our September position, actually a net change of $1,571 for that period. Comparing October 24 to October 23, current liabilities at the end of October 23 measured $52,275. The net change in the periods between October 24 and 2023 was $103,000, and that's basically an increase over that time frame. Total equity at the end of October measured $3,778,000 compared to $3,815,000 at the end of September, a change of $36,000, a negative change, and that's basically equated to the fact that we had a net loss for the period of September of $36,000. Total equity at the end of October 2023 was $3,793,000. That's a change of $14,000 between October 24 and October 23. If I look at the P&L on a summary basis, for October 2024, total ordinary income measured $248,302. Ordinary expenses, $378,340. Net ordinary loss for the month through October 24 was a negative $130,000. The net change between September and October was a net of minus $111,895. And if we look at the net change between October 24 and October 23, we've got a net change of $216,715. The breakdown on income, agency fees in October measured $31,784. There's no change between October and September. Seneca County, $54,000, same total as September 24, no change. Rent and lease income, $100,000, again, no change between October and September. RFL income was $78.42, a slight change of $209 between those two periods of September and October. Interest income was $54,674, a minor change of $50 between September and October of 2024. Total ordinary income was $248,302 at the end of October. September numbers measured $248,043, a net change of $259. If I compare October total ordinary income for 24 compared to 23, October 23 was $450,769. We got a net change between those two periods of $202,000, and that's a negative change. When we look at our expenses, again, this is through October 2024. Payroll was $186,000, up $17,000 from September. Benefits $93,000, up $8,900 between September and October. Professional services $51,000, up $5,800 between September and October. Office general expenses $8,627, up $1,624 between September and October. Administrative and technical expenses $12,241, up $1,300 between September and October. Insurance expense $2,580, no change between those two periods. Miscellaneous expense $2,464, no change between September and October. Travel and conferences $975, no change between September and October. Repairs and maintenance $14,046, up $1,694 between October and September. Marketing and promotion, zero cost. Depreciation expense $3,660, compared to $33,024. Expense for the month of October was $336. RFL expenses $2,075, no changes between October and September for the period. Total ordinary expenses $378,341 for October 2024, compared to $341,613 between, again, at the end of September. A change in total expenses of $36,728. If I compare October 24 ordinary expenses to October 23, we have a difference of approximately $14,229. At the October 23 number was $364,092. Again, that's a summary of the P&L and the balance sheet as of October, comparing it to September 24. Any questions?
So just summarizing both of those, we have a very significant cash reserve in our balance sheet, which is nice. It's been accumulated, as Tom, the president of Lions Bank, would say, that's been accumulated over a long period of time, and something to sort of burn through. I don't want to burn through it. We burn through more of it year to date because of what I think of as our primary sources of revenue, agency fees. When we approve a project, we get 1% of the capital. So those projects, depending on the size, can give us one-time or non-recurring chunks of money. We did not receive the kind of non-recurring chunks of money this year that we've seen in the past, and that's part of why we are trying to be cautious about spending money on building expansions. Any other comments?
Yeah, just say this. This isn't a governmental entity that just says, "Geez, we're in trouble here," and the state will send us money because they're doing good, or the county's going to bail us out. This entity has to self-support itself. There's different benefits at different times based upon things that are going on, but the reality of it is, if the IDA doesn't generate revenue, it doesn't exist. And we're gotta keep our nose to the grindstone on some items and not look at it and say, "Geez, we got this asset or this asset." That's not cash. Those are assets and properties, and sometimes they're just a cost. So I'd encourage you to have some talks with Bob and go through the financial side of things and understand where the entity has came over the years and, make sure that we're thinking of that as we approve things.
Be happy to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, any comments or questions for Bob?
What is the repairing of maintenance? It's awful high.
It is awful high. So that line historically was always basically mowing and landscaping out at Deer Run Industrial Park in Seneca Falls. So that number used to be, much lower. I mean, if you look the column 4 year to date for October 2023, last year it was, about 6,900. This year we're basically double that. That's because of this building. Because of us being in this building, all of our expenses, our utility bills, the mowing, the plowing, everything here is also going into that line now. And last year by October, we had a couple months of that cost because we did take this building on officially in July, but it wasn't very much. So this year we've had it for, from these financials, the whole 10 months. So we're seeing now what the actual costs are of being in this facility.
Thank you.
Other questions? Do we have a motion to approve the financial statements?
Motion to approve.
Yeah, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Rob, for those. Next item is the Finger Lakes Railway Corporation Inducement Resolution.
Okay, so we did do an inducement resolution for Finger Lakes Rail back in September, but that was based on an application where they were only applying for a pilot agreement. We had started having discussions with the company and with the 5 other counties that were involved at the time. One of those counties has since dropped out and is doing their own thing. That was Onondaga, but the others are still negotiating with us. It became clear in those conversations that the company was not going to be able to afford any increase in taxes, which we were all pushing for through a renewed pilot agreement, and increased agency fees to each of the IDAs without having additional benefit. And that additional benefit is going to come in the form of sales tax exemption, which is going to be tied directly to their capital spending in a county in any given year, which will also be tied directly to the agency fee that they then pay to that organization in a year. So they submitted a new application. They had to provide more detail, which is part of why it took so long to get this to everybody. So you have in your packets a copy of the new inducement resolution, and you also have their brand new application. Really the major changes is, they had to reframe the way that they were looking at the project itself. It's really become, 10-year capital maintenance and improvement of the rail. And so, they've included now estimated project costs. Before they were a little bit more wishy-washy on this. Their estimated investment in Seneca County only, because this is county specific, so they've provided different numbers to the other counties accordingly. Their estimated investment in Seneca County is going to be $8.666 million over the 10-year period. That's what they're anticipating. They did provide in the application an addendum that shows a breakdown of what some of those changes are. That's further out, things like bridge rehabilitation, tie replacement, all of those things. We do have them now filling out part 1 of the seeker in order to determine what the appropriate action is from this board in terms of seeker. If they're doing all replacements of existing infrastructure, we can classify it as a type 2 action and leave things there. But they're working on filling out something so that the board can, at some point in the future, probably January or February, determine what the appropriate action is in terms of the state environmental quality review that will be needed in order to do any kind of final incentive approval. Those were, the other major change that they made to the application is, they did on page 5, part C, likelihood of undertaking the project without receiving financial assistance. They did end up changing their answer to this. Previously, they had checked, no, which essentially means that they would be able to do the project without the assistance. But then they had tried to explain it away, but really, you know, they would not be able to do their, now that we're looking at it as maintenance, you know, they would not be able to make these investments in the rail and continue operating without the assistance. So they did make a change there to the application. Those are the primary differences. We do see on the Seneca County application a significant amount of employment retained, not so much created, but their headquarters are in Seneca County, so we see that reflected in our numbers. A lot of the other counties won't end up having that benefit. I think those are the major highlights that I wanted to point out, but happy to try to answer questions if anybody has any. At this point, the inducement resolution, as you all are well aware and have heard me say many times, is, you know, accepting that the application has been received is complete and that we can go ahead and, you know, negotiate and schedule public hearings for this project.
What is the IDA's portion of the agency fee here?
So this one will be structured a little bit differently. In that Finger Lakes Rail, we're anticipating having them pay an agency fee every year instead of one upfront. And what has been agreed on, not officially yet by the company, although I think, you know, they understand very clearly what our position is that they will pay 1% of the capital costs made in the county in that year, or $5,000, whichever is higher. So if for some reason their capital investment, you know, is below, you know, what would be essentially a $5,000 agency fee, we would get that instead. So effectively, we will actually end up getting paid slightly more in agency fees from them than we would have if it was a upfront 1% at the beginning. I think based on their, let me look at their spreadsheet again of the timings. Okay, so, they don't have this laid out by year, this is just total. I have a spreadsheet that they had used for us to estimate that showed their timings of when they thought certain years' investments were gonna happen. And I'll share all those calculations with you guys when we get
Where do you
to the
define-
financing.
It's not substantial.
Where do you define the capital, what's truly a capital expenditure and what's truly a repair and maintenance? Their repairs are huge. So, I mean, you know, what somebody might consider a repair and what's a capital investment, how do you and they decide that?
I mean, their repairs for our purposes are the capital investment. If
That's
they're wanting the sales tax exemption on it and wanting to, you know, benefit from having the cost of materials be tax exempt, then that's all capital.
okay. Most people wouldn't look at the types of things that they would do as repair, because they're big items.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering how you're gonna settle that up when it.
Yeah, for the purposes of considering this, if they wanna seek a benefit that's tied directly to it, it's gotta be part of the consideration, so.
All right.
Okay, other questions? So we need a vote to approve the inducement resolution. And that's a roll call. Kelly?
First we need a motion
Oh,
and
I'm
a
sorry.
second.
Yeah,
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
Second. All right, roll call vote.
Mr. Brousseau?
Yes.
Mr. Brownell?
Ernie? Yeah.
Mr. Guthrie?
Yes.
Mr. Keim?
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Tom Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Lott?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. On to the next one. We have the governance committee report. The governance committee met a couple weeks ago. We have 5 areas that we're going to discuss. The first is on modification to established policies. That's on this sheet here, but it's really modification, Sarah, to update the address number 1 of the office. And the second is a little more material. It embeds in our bylaws a requirement for board members to attend at least 75% of our regularly scheduled meetings, which is really reflects kind of standard practice for boards. If you find that your time and other responsibilities don't permit you to appear or come, we then can respectfully ask that you probably resign. So that's the one change. Anything else?
We also have to appear in person, we can't do it via
You
Zoom.
have to appear in person. We had one board member who traveled for work, couldn't do it in person. Apparently the rules of the road here, of the governments, is that you have to be in person at this point. So we need a motion to approve. Are we gonna approve each of these independently or all at once?
We will approve the bylaws and then we'll do the other policies that aren't being modified.
Great, okay. So we need a motion to approve these changes to the bylaws.
So moved.
Ernie, second to Ralph. Any questions, comments? We will now take a vote. Kelly?
Mr. Brusso,
Yes.
Mr. Brownell,
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie,
Yes.
Mr. Kine,
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Tom Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Shipley,
Yes.
Mr. Lot,
Yes.
motion carried.
Okay. Next on the list of governance committee items is the established policies. Nothing has changed, so that I don't know that we need to have too much discussion around these. We would need a motion to accept them.
So moved.
Second.
second.
Okay, any discussion? This is the boilerplate for how we are expected to operate. Any questions? Kelly, will you call the roll?
Mr. Brusso,
Yes.
Mr. Brownell,
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie,
Yes.
Mr. Kine,
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Tom Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Shipley, Mr. Lot,
Yes.
motion carried.
Okay, next item is the nomination of 2024 IDA officers. You have in your packet a sheet that looks like this. This has not only the IDA officers that are nominated, but also all the committee positions. And remind me, Sarah, which are we voting on here?
So this, in terms of IDA officers, is informational only at this point. In January, the board will vote formally to approve the slate of officers. So I would leave it, if anybody has any objections to the slate or wants to volunteer for something and didn't get a chance to yet, now would be the time between now and January to speak up. A little further down the agenda, when we get to other business, we will do approval and nomination of the 2 new members to the EDC board.
Yeah, so it's your last chance to try to muscle your
Kind of
way
weasel
into
out, or
these positions.
muscle your way in, yeah.
No weaseling, not unless somebody is gonna replace you.
Not unless you have a replacement, you don't get to, so thank you for, both Marie and Adam are willing to step into roles on our committees. Marie is going to serve, or at least we have proposed that she would serve as the secretary. And I think in order to give some of the new players here a little bit more responsibility, we are very grateful for your willingness to serve. All right, self-evaluation of the governance committee.
So I can just review this for everybody. The governance committee reviewed and discussed this at their meeting. It essentially gives everybody here a report on what the activities have been of that committee this year. So the governance committee this year isn't proposing any changes to their charter or guidelines. There have been no records of value that were disposed of. We did dispose of some that were valueless, meaning they were, beyond their retention periods or whatnot when we did our office move and cleaning. Other than that, the governance committee has met twice this year, and they've done the following activities. So they've made their recommendations to this board in regards to contracting with Beardsley Architects for design of a potential office renovation. As you all know now, that's indefinitely on hold, but the design work has been done. The amendment to the bylaws to include the attendance policy, the review of the other established policies. The governance committee also met and reviewed and is recommending approval of some professional service contracts for the new year, and then has also recommended a slate of officers for 2025. So there's no vote needed on that, it's just for informational purposes.
Thank you. And then finally, under the governance committee are the contract renewals for our professional services.
Okay, so before I read through what's being recommended, I do just want to note for anybody that wasn't on the governance committee that's used to seeing our agenda every year, we do typically have a fifth contract. We've always had one with Fisher Associates for engineering work. We've decided we've not used those funds over the past 5 years, I don't think. Possibly a little bit right before I started in regards to some of the hillside things that were done. But essentially, it's been so long that if we were to need an engineering firm to provide any work to the IDA, we would actually recommend going back out and doing a new procurement process to source somebody. So at this point, the governance committee decided to take that contract out and to not recommend any kind of blanket approval for that. The ones that are still on the list to be recommended to this board, Burke & Brown, they are the firm that provides accounting services to the IDA. Their monthly fee to us is $1,050 a month. That's going up $50 from what it was just this past year. And then December, they don't do as a straight monthly fee, they do it as an hourly thing because they spend more time in December helping us get ready for audit season. Ellie Beatty is our bookkeeper. She's been our bookkeeper for many years now. She has a fee of $675 a month for 20 hours. Additional hours are billed at a rate of $30 an hour. Most months it's $675. I don't really remember the last time that she went over that, even getting ready for the audit. She's usually at her monthly rate. And that has not, there's no proposed change there. Jim Armstrong helps us with our business retention and expansion program. His contract has a cap on it. It's capped out at $15,000 a year. He's usually well below that, roughly half, somewhere between $7,000 and $10,000, I would say, a year. And then last but not least, Bob Kernan is CFO. His fees to the IDA are $1,000 a month. So those are what are being recommended to this board for approval.
Questions? Is there a motion to accept the contract renewal proposal?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the proposed contract renewals?
Aye.
Need a roll call, actually. Kelly?
Mr. Russo,
Yes.
Mr. Brownell,
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie,
Yes.
Mr. Kine,
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Tom Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Shipley,
Yes.
Mr. Lott.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, next, on the meeting schedule for 2025. In your packet here.
Unless anybody has conflicts that they know of or, wants to make any changes, please look it over and let us know. Our meetings are set for the same sort of time block, so it's second Tuesday of the month at 9 a.m. here. The only exceptions to that are March, which we meet at the end of the month. That's still on a Tuesday. But we meet at the end of the month in order to do the audit review and approval before we have to post it to the Paris system by March 31st.
April 1st.
April 1st. Thank you, Kelly. And then the other one that is different is November 12th. That is a Wednesday. because Tuesday, November 11th is Veterans Day, and we're closed for Veterans Day, so we pushed that meeting by a day. So I wanted to make note that those are a little bit of an exception to our usual schedule.
Okay. Post that on the blackboards. Okay, Jeff, you're next. Can you give us an update?
Yes, sir.
Activities.
Sure. So, last meeting, I talked a little bit about the effort to encourage New York State workers to use their paid time off in New York State. And that is really a bigger push by us to encourage overnight traffic and visitation from other parts of New York State, especially in the shoulder seasons, which is what we're coming into here. January 28th is National Plan Your Vacation Day. So we are going to be putting a little bit of marketing push and effort into encouraging those folks on January 28th to plan their vacation accordingly. Really excited to be working with the schools. This is a new development, probably since our last meeting. Really excited to be working with some school districts on helping establish some partnerships with local business community for volunteer hours, for internships or mentorship program. It's definitely something I think you're going to be hearing about, and I probably you're very well aware of this, but you're probably going to be hearing more about the new experiential learning, I'm calling it, that's coming into the state. Want to talk about a little our annual business awards, our community and business awards. So this is a program that we do at our annual dinner every year in January, and we recognize local businesses for their contributions to our community as well as individuals. And this year we've got 3 of them. So the Sessler companies are going to be the business of the year for Seneca County Chamber Community for all of their work with the expansion of their project. I know the IDA had a hand in that as well, along with the expansion of their business operations. Leo and Tom's on a small business front is going to be recognized for a pretty significant investment they made into Seneca County and the Waterloo community specifically. And Michael Scaglione is going to be honored as for all of his humanitarian efforts to help in this community. That's my update, Bruce.
Thank you, Jeff. Ernie? Something?
Yeah, tonight's a big night for the budget. Other things we gotta vote on, grants, quite a few different things, so it's gonna be a very long meeting tonight, I believe. Hopefully the budget will get through. We did get it down to 17% increase. And since last meeting, it may have gone down more. I haven't been notified. So that's what's going on tonight.
Okay, don't want to miss that.
No, we won't miss that.
Okay, Sarah, thank you, Ernie.
Right, so year-end report. This was definitely the most difficult year-end report I've had to write since I've been here, and that obviously this was not a great year in terms of projects. Flat out, it was pretty bad. You know, we had Gregory, which is, a small project, obviously doing great things in the hamlet of Fayette, adding 6 new housing units and a, small retail commercial flex space. And we were awarded the pass-through grant from the DOT. It was approximately $1.5 million for some rail renovations and upgrades at the depot to bring in steel and grain and those types of things to support some local businesses. Other than that, it's been extremely slow. We have a couple of projects from last year that were approved, which were those 2 Lodi solar projects that don't count toward this year, but we're still holding out, and Rob, I'm hoping that we'll be ready to close before the end of the year with any luck on those. But other than that, it's been, extremely slow in terms of revenue for us, and so we've had to sort of, pivot and make some changes. I will say, it's not necessarily been all bad. Our business retention and acquisition program has remained very strong this year. We had our record number of visits So you'll see on the second page, the table there shows the past 5 years. We were showing, 2019 and the previous, but now we're just gonna do 5-year chunks of time, so every year you'll see the first year drop off. So we did 71 business retention expansion visits this year, but again, only got, really the 2 applications received, one for Gregory, one for Finger Lakes Rail. There was technically one that came in for Savion for North Seneca Solar Project, but I've decided not to include that in the count because that's been sort of sitting so long that they'll have to, resubmit a new application at this point. In terms of our project pipeline, just to give you guys some idea of where we are, obviously a lot of things contributed, I think, to the slowdown that we saw in projects this year. A big part of it was interest rates were quite high for some of the really high value projects, things like Willard, where the response to the RFP was maybe not what we hoped for. A lot of the feedback that we've been hearing is it's been very difficult to secure development financing, especially for projects at that large of a scale. We've had a lot of political uncertainty this year with the election. I think obviously now we sort of know or have an idea of what the next 4 years will look like. We're starting to see some projects kind of picking back up, but other things just have had a long timeline anyway. We did submit sites, at least that we're aware of. It's possible there were more submitted in Seneca County, but we submitted sites 9 times to Greater Rochester Enterprise for various leads that they have had. And aside from that, we are internally tracking 34 other projects. I will give you a bit more of a breakdown on what those look like. So I'm kind of jumping around the report here, but I'm going to jump to the very last bit, the project pipeline snapshot. So please feel free to give us feedback if there's another way that you guys think would be helpful to look at this. This wasn't focused so much on the projected revenue side because we did that sort of with the long-term forecast. This is more trying to show you the seriousness of the projects that we're tracking, of trying to qualify them in groups of some kind, and showing by industry and also by source. So you'll see that those 9 GRE projects, those are leads, those are probably the weakest, that we have because it's so difficult for us to track and to really know what's serious. I will say going into next year, something that we're going to be trying to do is talk to GRE and figure out how do we get more transparency or more communication about which projects, so we know which projects of those aren't moving forward. I mean, there's plenty of them where they submit sites and things just don't happen or people aren't interested and they move on, but trying to get better communication and knowing how many of those aren't serious and how many might be still considering Seneca County and, trying to keep track of that better on our own end. 18 of the IDA projects that we're tracking are considered leads. I broke the IDA ones down into inbound versus outbound. So inbound is somebody calling us, asking about incentives or whatever for a project, what kind of support they might have. Outbound would be our business retention expansion, essentially our sales mission. So just to give you an idea of where these are coming from. So it was about 50-50 on the leads, as far as the people that come to us or the people that we're going to. We've got 5 projects that have been on hold for some time. One of those was inbound, the others were a result of our business retention and expansion. Next stage, we have what I consider to be weak prospects. So this is projects that we have a little more information about. They appear to be more than just some business owner's, idea. But for whatever reason, there's still a fair amount of uncertainty in regards to timing, or maybe they're heavily reliant on other factors like a grant coming in that they may or may not receive that would potentially tank the project, that sort of thing. So there's 6 of those. One is sort of just an average. Then we've got 2 which are strong prospects. So we're not quite positive that we're going to get an application, but are pretty certain that they're going to get to that point. We have 1 that we're waiting on an application for right now, and one that we've received an application for, which was Finger Lakes Rail. Just to show you by industry, so we've got ag, food, bev, that includes everything from, you know, like grain or milling to winery, vineyard expansion. We're kind of putting that all in one category. There are 12 of those that are leads and 2 that are on hold. Nothing more serious than that at this point. And I will say some of these projects would fall into multiple categories, but they're in whichever is sort of the strongest portion of the project itself. 3 hospitality leads, 1 is a weak prospect and 1 is a strong prospect. 2 housing projects, 1 is a lead, 1 is a weak prospect. 7 manufacturing leads, 1 on hold, 2 weak prospects, and that's the one we're waiting on an application for, is a manufacturing project. Renewable energy, we've got 3 leads, 2 weak, 1 average, 1 strong. I will say the 1 strong is Sapion, is that North Seneca solar project. You know, it's not quite a waiting application, kind of because it's been taking so long, but that would be pretty certain at some point to convert to the next stage. 1 service business that's had a project on hold, and then 3 transportation, 1 that's a lead, 1 that's on hold, and 1 that, you know, Finger Lakes Rail that we've received an application for. So that's a little bit of the breakdown. We'll try to do this more often so you can kind of see the numbers jumping around as things convert to the next stage, and you know, we'll even assign names to some of these as the information becomes public, but again, at this point, a lot of these are so early stage that we can't really share company names specifically.
So Sarah, will you be going to conferences where these kinds of projects, you know, the contractors might come or developers might come to? Do they have conferences like that?
I'm sure they do. I think it would be a waste of money, quite frankly, for us. I mean, most of the conferences that are sort of local that we go to are more economic development focused. You don't have as many developers usually going to those. It's like professional training and that kind of thing and sharing best practices. If you're gonna try to go and like pitch somebody to come to your area and do more of a marketing mission, you're generally having to travel further to bigger conferences. It's very expensive. And quite frankly, we don't really have anything to pitch. We don't have enough sites really to make it worthwhile. I mean, it's something that we had tried to explore to some extent with Willard, but a lot of the problem with a site like Willard and doing something like that, and we were looking more from the perspective of publications to advertise in, is there are so many different uses there, and a lot of the types of trade shows that people go to, like Semicon West, where they're trying to get semiconductors, and some of the others, those are much more industry focused and not so much on hospitality and housing and the other things. And we don't have a site within our control that we can sell to a big company. We do have sites that we're out there, we're trying to market and support that are privately owned. But I would say it would be a waste of resources for us to go to a conference, mostly because there's so much uncertainty with that. You know, a private landowner may decide they don't want to sell, they may not like, you know, whatever the offer is. So we really don't have anything viable to really go and pitch, unfortunately.
So this has always been an issue since I've been part of this organization, is how do you identify these folks and how do you kind of reel them in? I think it's a matter of being out in the community. We held a tour of the Willard site back in May. We get a lot of outreach to potential interested parties in the Willard site. That really didn't yield anything material, but we got a call yesterday from one of those people who was touring the Willard site, saying he's interested in a fairly sizable real estate project, and would the IDA be able to assist in that project. So simply being in the community among the potential investors in this county can lead to a positive outcome. I think we need to do more of that. I think we need to be more public facing so that people, the guy picked up the phone and said to me, hey, what is a pilot, and would Seneca County consider a pilot for a prospective housing development? He says he's ready to move as soon as 2025. He could be, I think, a serious one.
Great.
So that one kind of came through the window, but also as a result of being in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Just another thought on that, kind of to your point, Ben. Sarah, in this chart, you listed the leads by source, and GRE is on the top of that. And hearing what you're hearing about the sites, I understand private versus public, but the IDA does pay money, membership, right, or some sort of fee to GRE to do this, and they have obviously a bigger network, maybe bigger budget than what we have. Has there ever been, or could there be, an opportunity to have GRE come to this board and talk about having a dialogue about what it is they're seeing? Because I would think they might go to some of these conferences like what you're talking about too, just to kind of get an idea for like what is their knowledge of Seneca County? What are they selling? When they pick up one of these calls.
I will say that they are regional, so they are trying to sell the region, the Rochester Finger Lakes region. And what that means is that they're not biased toward any one county in that region that they're representing. A win for them is getting a company here to a site somewhere that works for them. So when they do go to these conferences, they're meeting with mostly site selectors. They're having those kinds of conversations, and the site selectors are the ones that get hired by these firms when they want to, come out and find, their new manufacturing plant or whatever it is. They're either getting the leads directly from site selectors based on relationships, or they're getting the leads funneled to them through Empire State Development, because a lot of these really big searches are going directly to the state levels and then they're disseminating. So what happens is GRE, when they have a company that's interested looking for sites, they will push it out to all of their counties and say, here's what we know about this project in terms of here are the needs, here's what they're looking for in a property, send us anything and everything you have. In addition to that, they've worked with us for so long that they know certain sites in our county well enough to just automatically submit them. So like the depot, they've done, I'm sure, more than dozens of tours of the depot for people. Unfortunately, nothing has ever, stuck to this point, but they're very familiar. They've worked with Mike Palumbo at Flom Management for a long time. So they've already got a lot of the details on that site, and we don't necessarily have to resubmit it every time. If we see something, we'll say, hey, you guys are putting this in, right? And they'll say yes. There's some properties up along Route 318 that they are very keenly aware of and are, submitting. So they're very familiar. I'd be happy to invite them sometime to come in. They're a very busy team, so it may take a little bit of time because they are very much boots on the ground, constantly having meetings and site tours. But in terms of the way that they do it, they're not saying, oh, Seneca County's too rural or anything. They want to see projects come to this region. And they've been out here a few times. We've taken them for visits. We've had them meet with Waterloo Container before. We've had them meet with Earl Martin before. So they've, seen some of the work that's being done in the county. It's just a matter of figuring out, those 9 projects we've responded at one point. I'm sure a lot of those probably, especially the ones earlier in the year, may have dropped off. But sometimes the timelines on these are so long, and it's like, well, it's hard to know if any of those are really still interested or if those were just, a shot in the dark and we've kind of been weeded out at this point. So I'd like to be able to get a better sense from them at the very least of how do we know, that projects are sort of done for.
So with Micron's big move into Syracuse, are they forming any organizations or groups like in Onondaga County that's saying, here's where the periphery would be for development? Because I'm just thinking of people who would be suppliers to that organization. to
So-
that project.
Like a week ago, maybe, I got an inquiry from them. A semiconductor supply chain company is interested in a property in Seneca County, and they wanted to know about foreign trade zones. We're a part of a foreign trade zone by virtue of one that was set up through Ontario County years ago, and I've had to track down some information because we haven't had any businesses taking advantage. So we're, being responsive and providing the information. It's just a matter of if anything comes of it. But they're certainly pushing for it. They are part of the group between Syracuse and Rochester and Buffalo that's working on the iSmart corridor, which is the federal semiconductor tech hub that was awarded. They've been doing a lot of attraction on the semiconductor side. There's been obviously a little bit more success right now in terms of companies actually selecting sites out in like Genesee County, where they have a big industrial park called Stamp. It's over 1,000 acres. But they're trying to push those kinds of companies. A lot of the leads we see from them are more on the manufacturing side, so it's semiconductor now, or we see a lot of the ag and food production companies, coming from them. They also get a fair amount of life sciences and things. Those ones don't tend to meet. They don't really match up for us as much on those, mostly because of the sites we have available and the requirements that those types of companies are looking for. They also get a fair amount of optics and photonics and things because of Rochester. So again, it's just a matter of what the company is looking for in a site, and lately we've had the most sites to offer on the sort of semiconductor or ag and food production side of things.
Well, we've got sites, but do we have people? Do we have employees available?
Nobody has employees available.
Yeah.
No, not really. That's part of it, and I think that's part of why we haven't seen anything seriously convert from them in a while, because, they're talking about projects that are, the semiconductor project they mentioned would be like 200 employees. That's not insignificant. Not to say it couldn't be done here, but, companies do look at those types of things. Thankfully we can pull from an area. It's just a matter of how far people are willing to commute. If they're comfortable doing an hour commute, we can easily pull from talent in Rochester or Syracuse, Ithaca. But not necessarily everybody is willing to make that drive unless the pay is worthwhile, so.
The big thing today is having any place for housing. And Seneca County is at the bottom of the list. We have been forever. I've complained about it forever. And every county you go to, the developers that are, even the small ones for 20, 30 units every single year are busy. The bigger ones are even busier, but the ones here, there's a few sole builders and that's it. And it's hard to get approvals, it's hard to do anything. It's hard to get electric and gas. I don't even know if we talk with electric and gas and have a feel. But it's hard to get anything done, so if you had a place that could actually put up housing would help, because even in the counties up that way are having a hard time saying they're gonna be able to put up housing developments for people. I know we had some talks in this county about that, and I don't know where we are now, but, we think of a lot of times just the big resources and things like that, but to even have a place where you could put up a housing development, we're right off the thruway. There's other major 05 and 20 and 31 different 104 and different ones that go up that way. But I don't think it's even on our radar screen hardly that we think about it. I think the county's talking about it a little bit now, but that's an area I think to look at, because I know one area that's being considered is a project that has sewer, water, and the big thing is it looks like they're gonna nail down electric. And if that goes, their development for housing is gonna be unbelievable, because there's nobody that can get it. You go up to Pittsford, Perrington, Farmington, those areas.
The demand is there, for sure.
And But the big holdup for most everybody today is the electric.
Well, and that's why we're trying to push so hard, you know, it's sort of a simultaneous effort of, obviously, we want to attract these companies and we're being responsive to these leads, and at the same time, you know, the land bank is trying to do some things with housing and get more momentum there. And we've been having conversations with them about the role that the IDA might be able to play in that. You know, there have been, you know, the developer that Bruce mentioned that's interested. It's a big part of why we're so heavily invested in Willard, because of the opportunities and the fact that some of these places already have infrastructure. You know, there have been discussions about some other sites more to the north of the county as potential housing, and it's just, you know, we're trying to sort of make all the pieces happen at the same time. Everybody is like, you know, they want to find a place to put their new manufacturing plant or whatever, but they need workers, and the workers need housing, but the developers won't build the housing unless they're the people there. So it's like a chicken and egg situation, and you're just trying to like push everybody over the finish line at the same time, kind of thing.
All right.
A couple
Anything else?
other things quick, yep, sorry. So we did have 3 other priorities for the year. Obviously, those have kind of had to shift a little bit. One of those being related to this site discussion of, you know, the board had originally set aside, it was $50,000. We were intending to hire a consultant and do sort of an inventory of available sites in the county as part of this effort. Because we're trying to be cognizant of the fact that it's been such a slow project here and trying to be more financially mindful, we've since pivoted and are trying to do some of that internally. So Dave has been working really hard to get some like spec sheets drafted. We're working on those for some of the sites that we know about, that we talk about very frequently, and we're hoping in the new year to, you know, keep tweaking that and add more to that. The other piece is in terms of engagement with the community. We have had some increased engagement as a result of being in this office. So Empire State Development in the summer hosted a consolidated funding application workshop for the local business community. That went pretty well. To my knowledge, I don't know if we had anybody apply. It was a little bit close to the deadline that we did it, so it'll really hopefully have more of an impact for this next year, giving people time to think about projects. Other than that, SBDC hosted their Fast Track to Business workshop here. That's like for if you want to start a business or if you own one, but you know, want to get more of a crash course, and you know, they bring in everything from like, here's legally how the different entities and how you go about business formation, to here are some considerations for insurance, accounting, banking, you know, everything under the sun. They're going to be doing another one of those here next year, and they're also planning to do 2 times a month in-person business advising services here out of the IDA space. Go ahead.
I think we're ready to move on here.
Okay.
All set?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. We have one other item under other business. We think we need to propose officers of the EDC to the county supervisors.
No.
You don't?
So we need to appoint members to the EDC board, and they are appointed by the IDA, so it doesn't have to go through the county supervisors.
Okay,
So the recommendation is to appoint Bruce Murray and Ralph Lott to the EDC board, to replace Steve Russo and Tom Kine.
okay, that requires a motion.
A motion, a second, and then a roll call probably.
Once again, the motion would be to recommend Ralph Lott and myself as replacements on the EDC board. Would someone like to make that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any comments? Ralph, you willing to do this?
Sure.
All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's passed. Okay, other business. We have one other item of other business. So, coming to the end of the meeting here, I'd like to hold these to an hour if we can, but there are 2 people whose attendance will be sorely missed at these meetings. One of them is Steve Russo, who's been here and on the board for 14 years, and the other is Tom Kine, who's been on the board for 19 years. Sarah Davis said that the combined time of both Tom and Steve is more years than she's been on Earth. What I'd like to say, I mean, because the IDA is as kind of arcane and complex as it has appeared, obviously, it's really helpful to have people who've been here a long time to kind of provide some institutional history, and both Tom and Steve have done that many, many times. We will miss you, and we thank you very much for your service.
Thank you.
Token of our recognition. Steve, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce.
Yeah, Tom.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thanks.
We also got chocolate chip cookies.
Good.
All right, so, thank you again. We are now at a point where we are going to need to enter into executive session. So I request a motion to enter into executive session for the discussion of the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of particular persons, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of particular persons.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're back from executive session. We have nothing to report from that session. All at this point we need to do is, if there's any other, is there any other business? We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So many.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?